This edition of ESPN FC, Kay Murray, Craig Burley, Shaka Hislop and Stuart Robson once again back in the studio with us as we continue the conversation on Florentino Perez being re-elected as Real Madrid president. This is some of the reaction from the papers. Marca going with the victory, Mundo saying Florentino wins and Mourinho returns, and Diario asks with Florentino 2030. So now that it is confirmed, we wanted to look forward. And Stuart wanted to take a look at some of the areas that really do need dealing with right now and where Florentino needs to be looking when it comes to his players on the pitch.
Yeah. I mean, if a manager was coming in and he had the gumption to say, I don't want him and I don't want him, I'm talking about Vinicius Junior, I would do that, but I don't think he's going to have the power to do that. So if you're looking at players to come in, you need a player on the right-hand side because they haven't really got any quality out on that right-hand side of the top level. You'd need a right-back because I don't think Alexander-Arnold is quite good enough, and there's already talk of Dumfries coming in. And they need a centre-half because, and is Konate, they're talking about him coming in, is he good enough? He has had a poor season, but I think he's had a few issues off the field. So they're the players that I would think him, but the manager who comes in has got to make the best of the players he's got because he's got a good midfield, I think, in Bellingham as the attacking player. They've got Valverde as a holding midfield player alongside Tchouaméni. They've got three left backs that they could play that are okay. They've got Vinicius Junior, who could be an outstanding player if he just concentrated on football. And they've got one of the world's best strikers in Mbappe. So they've got some good players, but the manager's got to get the best out of them. And they're just the three players I was thinking that they might need.
Tchouaméni, Camavinga didn't have a good season.
No.
Didn't make the French squad. Valverde, Bellingham, you mentioned them. Throw in some playmakers, Diaz, Arda, but particularly those first four. International footballers, but are they good enough? I mean, that's by that I mean not are they good enough to play for Real Madrid, but do they have a good enough balance? For example, there's no passers in there really. Valverde's a runner.
Yeah, if you've got Vinicius Junior, Mbappe, Bellingham playing in the number 10, and a right-sided player like they're talking about Elise maybe coming in, then you need balance in midfield. So you probably couldn't have a ball-playing midfielder. You've got to have two midfield players that are going to be solid. And I would say Tchouaméni and Valverde could do that job very well.
Because I look at Barcelona, they're not physical in the middle of the park, really. And their best pairing in there at times is, I know they play with a number 10. Sometimes it's Fermin Lopez, sometimes it's Dani Olmo. But their midfield pairing is Frankie de Jong and Pedri. And it's very effective. There's not a lot of physicality in there.
What's the difference between the front players of Barcelona and the front players of Real Madrid at the moment?
Well, they work hard.
They work hard. So the two midfield players for Barcelona don't have to be quite so good defensively because they're the players, they're the secondary players for the closing down. When you're playing for Real Madrid and Vinicius Junior's not working hard enough and Mbappe's not working hard enough and Bellingham's made a forward run and doesn't get back, then I think those two holding players...
That's the big question going forward, Jack. I mean, the big question is not just the balance and, Kroos and Modric are not there now. Casemiro went before that. Two fantastic passers of the ball. They haven't got that now, so it's a different dynamic. But they have got talent, right? They have got people that can pick up in the defence if Güler plays or Brahim Diaz plays and Bellingham's making those forward runs. The big $1 million question is, are the egos going to be parked on the sidelines for the good of Real Madrid and the new manager coming in terms of what he wants? Or are the crybabies going to go running off to Florentino Perez again and the media and all and sundry and say, this is not how we do things at Real Madrid. And oh, by the way, 2 years ago we were successful, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, but certainly not for the last 18 months or 2 years. It hasn't worked. So something has to change. And I have a big question whether a leopard can change his spots.
So the big decision
going to run and for
Perez and the manager is, do I get rid of those players that have got big egos and have caused problems before, or can I get rid of them? Who's going to take them?
I think that's the issue. Who's going to take them? Are they willing to go? No. Vinicius might see out the last year of his contract and kind of solve that issue for you, but where does Vinicius go in terms of a landing spot to kind of command the finances that he does at Real Madrid? I'm not sure that there's that club. Also, who's willing to take that chance, pay Vinicius the kind of money he would want, knowing that he's not going to offer an awful lot defensively? Nobody's going to take Kylian Mbappe at this point. Not the money he's on, arrived at Real Madrid on a free transfer, unless you just ship them both off to Saudi Arabia. There is not a landing spot for them in European football. And that is a big issue for me. we can talk a lot about Real Madrid and the imbalance in the midfield, and I certainly don't think the back four is good enough until you can solve that issue. And I'm not convinced that Jose Mourinho, from a tactical perspective, can get that right. Maybe from a discipline perspective, he can somehow get the best out of a Kylian Mbappe and a Vinicius Junior. But tactically, I don't see it. And as a result, it just forces everybody to do things that they really should not have to at this level of the game.
One thing we do know is that Florentino Perez is going to finally reveal who this 150 million euro player is that they're making this bid for, this right-sided attacking player. There's been a lot of talk of it being Michael Olise. That would solve a few problems if they were to be able to get him.
Well, we're going to see the highlights probably of the game today. He scored a hat-trick for France and he looked an outstanding player, and he's been an outstanding player for Bayern Munich. But, as we were saying last night, if I was Olise, would I go from Bayern Munich to Real Madrid at the moment? I'm enjoying my football at Bayern Munich. I'm playing really well. We've got a chance of winning the Champions League next year. We're probably going to win the Bundesliga. I'm playing excellent football. Would I put it all in doubt if I went to Real Madrid, a club that have been in decline over the last 2 seasons? I'm not sure you would.
But it's still
Real Madrid.
It's Real Madrid. Real Madrid and Barcelona remain, whilst not always been the best teams, remain the landing spot for top players. Because, you know, particularly Bayern Munich, they've been so dominant in Germany. I mean, they've had the odd slip up with Dortmund and Leverkusen. But they've been so dominant. I know Real Madrid and Barcelona are, but it's, you know, it's a bun fight between the two of them. It's still a great landing spot. And you know, he would be... he's just an amazing player. He'd be a great addition. If that is the player, I mean, I don't know.
I can't think of anybody else, a right-sided player that would be worth that amount of money.
To that point, do they really need, they need this, right? They need a strong right-sided player, even if it isn't Olise. This is an area that needs...
I think they do. I think they do. You look at the balance or imbalance of Vinicius on the left-hand side and what he gives, and an attacking perspective. And while there's been any number of players, Rodrigo has filled in first to start with on that right-hand side, and then it could be just about anybody. They don't have that out-and-out right-sided player to offer that balance to Vinicius Junior. And I think that takes away from Real Madrid. I think in terms of their attacking balance, that right side needs to be addressed this summer.
But you can only play with 2 wide players if your centre-forward stays as centre-forward. If he keeps drifting here, there and everywhere, and they get it out wide, there's nobody to cross the ball to. And that's where Bellingham has to play in the number 10 role and be given that job. And again, we go back to then you've got to have 2 holding midfield players.
We'll get a good gauge of Mbappe, what the mindset is for next season during this World Cup, because he has got a reputation, even for the French national team, to do what he wants. And that's part of the problem at Real Madrid. Now, Didier Deschamps has semi-accepted that. And to that point, it's one of the reasons they were 2-0 down. I've touched on this before. It's one of the reasons they were 2-0 down in the World Cup World Cup final 4 years ago, because he was on that left side. Giroud was through the middle, and he did not track back at all in the first half an hour of that game. And they got absolutely smashed down that side. It was Molina and it was 1 or 2 others, and Olivier Giroud was the cannon fodder for the substitution, to put Mbappe in the middle and bring a substitute on that would chase back, because he wasn't willing to do that role, even for his country, in a World Cup final. And this, we're talking about Real Madrid asking a player to do the basics of what, even a goalkeeper, Shaq, you know, and we keep seeing these goalkeepers with cramps these days. What the hell is that?
All the time, we do.
But that's the basics when you're a kid playing the game as an 8, 9, 10-year-old, before you go on to be in youth teams and reserves and first teams. The very basic, will never change, is to have the supreme success, you need work rate to go with the talent. Now, as an individual, he's getting a lot of success, Kylian Mbappe, but for a club team, he's really not. I mean, he's won Ligue 1 with PSG, but he's been brought into Real Madrid to take them back to the top of the pile. And that means working hard as well.
But to that point, Real Madrid and Florentino Perez,
they've accepted
that.
it.
This was nothing new. This was nothing new about Kylian Mbappe. It was evident in Monaco, evident in PSG, to the point where Luis Enrique and that video came out that everybody spoke about. And yet still, Real Madrid were willing to not pay the money, given that it was a free transfer, but put him on the kind of wages that they have. They knew who Kylian Mbappe was. They knew his playing style. And again, now that you have that, how do you ask Jose Mourinho to somehow change that habit? I'm not sure that Jose Mourinho is that manager. And even though Jose Mourinho somehow made Samuel Eto'o into a left back.
You can only have tactics if every one of your players buys into the tactics.
Yeah.
You know, the centre forward doesn't have to run around like a lunatic. But if you're saying we're going to force him down one side of the field, the centre forward has to run around and say, OK, you can't play it back to the goalkeeper or you can't play it to the centre half. So we know it's coming down that side. But Mbappe won't even do that.
No.
He just wanders around.
But it seems to me that Florentino Perez is successful a businessman and he's had success at Real Madrid. Of course he has, doing what he does. But it seems to me he's lost the thought process of the dynamics of a dressing room, particularly in the managerial appointments. Ancelotti managed the whole thing for him and was pretty successful. But he clearly, by his appointments, doesn't understand the issues within the dressing room, because he had players there with egos that didn't want to run, but yet brought in a young coach with fresh ideas who he knew were going to ask the players to do different things. And when those players put the shield up and basically said, no, that's not how we do it here, then he went off and sacked the manager. But yet it was him that brought the manager in for change. He wanted change. Now he's gone back to the older style, the sort of more rugged approach, the more pedestrian approach, more of a man management style. So he really, to me, Florentino Perez, doesn't have a great grasp of how his dressing room is operating and what he needs to make that dressing room work.
I think Florentino Perez has kind of relied on what brought him success before in Galacticos. Let's just sign the best players there are, regardless, throw them all onto the same field, and we'll get success. It worked once before in the Zidane era. It then came again with Ronaldo, and they signed Kaká. And to your point, Craig, not really recognizing the value of a Karim Benzema, who supported Ronaldo, and those kinds of players. And now you're asking the same of this squad, and they aren't able to do as those two previous iterations of Galacticos has done. And it's not an easy fix. Maybe to the point, football has moved on, and Florentino Perez has kind of stayed where he is and what's brought him success.
But to that point, Shaq, they've maybe only got one, I would say, Galactico and Mbappe, who's a lazy one. The others, I mean, if you're looking at me, if you show me that Real Madrid midfield, if you think Real Madrid, I've always probably got the best players, maybe not the best team, but the best players. I don't think they have at the moment. Probably Mbappe, you could argue, but I think Kvaratskhelia is probably more productive than Vinicius Junior. Michael Olise is better than anything I've got on the other side. The PSG midfield is better than the Real Madrid midfield, probably man for man at the moment.
But they won't be able to get those players.
No, but generally, over the years, they've gone out and they've pilfered those players and they've pieced that jigsaw together. I think at the moment, they don't even have the best players. You know, other clubs like PSG and Bayern and maybe to a certain extent Arsenal and Man City, and I think they do have better players as a general rule of thumb. So, you know, it's not... It's a difficult job. I mean, Mourinho's laughing because he's fallen on his feet. I mean, his career was going, you know, Roberto Martinez was going to have a stinker at some point and sail into the sunset somewhere and get a pile of cash. And Mourinho's going to get the Portugal job just to finish his career and, you know, not to have that day-to-day grind. And all of a sudden, he's been propelled back into this huge arena in Real Madrid, and it really has come as a bolt out of the blue.
Yeah, well, he was always given more power, but now that Florentino's been supporting the players, that is going to be very interesting to see.
It'll make for a very interesting season at Real Madrid.
Yes,
how many times do you think
will.
Mourinho will get sent? I read 4 or 5 over the course of the season.
Start taking those bets a little bit later.
Punching his own players.
All right, Transfer Talk web scrape to stay up to date.